Hello everybody, this is Namanjan coming out with a new tutorial. So this tutorial is a continuation of the previous Diablo style inventory system. So before we continue on, I wanted to fix a bug that we encountered last time. So last time basically when we finished our tutorial, we made it such that our player wouldn't react to when we click on the GUI. But there's a small bug. For example, when we click down over here, it actually reacts. That's because when you go over here, you see this statement over here where it takes in the input.mouse position y. That actually doesn't take in the input, the exact y position. What it does is actually, it starts from here. So this is the highest number of y, and this is the lowest number. So it starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, climbing out to 1200 or whatever your screen resolution is. If that doesn't make sense, it's fine. It's going to make sense now. So basically, you're going to say screen height minus input.mouse position.y. And you need to always do that because this will give you the exact position of your y. Let me actually demonstrate to you why this works. So when I do debug.log, y, oops. So when we do debug that and we play, as you can see, it gives 900 over here while it should be giving 0, and it gives 0 over here while it should be giving 900. So that's why you have to do screen height minus input.position.y, and then when we play it, it actually fixes the bug. So it doesn't no longer reacts to this inventory. Okay, so now this tutorial we're actually gonna move on to actually taking inputs. So as you can see, it doesn't actually do anything when we click or drag. Okay, so basically, to take an input from the inventory, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through every. Oops, let me take off these. Oh, sorry. I was just doing some testing before starting. So we're gonna go through every one of these slots and check if these slots contain the mouse position. If they contain the mouse position, they're gonna return which position it is, and then that way we're gonna know which slot the user is actually pressing at. So for that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a new method called void detect mouse action. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna loop through all the slots. So we're gonna say is less than slot with that slot. Whoops. We can actually go to your void draw slots method in the inventory and copy paste that code. I'll explain this again. So basically, as you can see, you're looping through all of the slots, as you can see over here. So now basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna check if the slot's rectangle is actually containing the mouse position. So here, as you can see, as we draw the slots, the X and Y position is actually position.x plus the frame X. So basically, it is the position of this plus the position of the relative position of each of these slots. I've already explained this before, so won't do it again. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to copy this part over here. New rectangle, so we're going to take the X position and Y position of the slots. We're going to say rect slot is equal to new rectangle. And what we're going to do is here we have the width and height of the slot itself. So we're going to put in, just going to go over to here, put in width and height. So this will give the actual slot position, its actual rectangle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say if slot dot contains and then we're going to put in a new vector 2, and we're gonna give in the mouse position, and then input dot mouse position dot y. Oops. And as I've told you before, this won't give you the y position, but you have to do screen.height minus y. Okay. And of course, you need another bracket over there. And then what we're gonna do is, if it contains, for now, we're gonna say debug.log, just to check if you're printing out the right slot. And we're gonna print out the coordinates of the x and y, and we're gonna return. So this basically breaks out of everything and just exits the method. Have error. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So what basically, instead of position.x, because we want the actual slot's position.x, we're gonna go over here. Just copy paste this slot x comma y. I'll explain this just now. Add position. So basically what we're doing over here is we're making a new rectangle of slots, and we're taking the position of our inventory and adding it to the position of our slots. And the same thing over here with y. And we're giving it the width and height of the slots. And then what we're going to do is, as we can see over here, this is where it enters when we do detect GUI action to make sure that our mouse is within the range of our inventory. This is where the code falls. So we're going to go over here and say detect mouse action. I'm going to go back, and we're going to go over here, and as you can see, as we go over these slots, it's going to give the coordinates of each slot, and that is how we're going to take in the inputs. Okay, so now that we basically know what slots we are pressing on, now we need to basically we need to do actions now. So basically we need to drag items and so forth. So basically how we're going to start with is, when we click for the first time, we're going to store it into a vector. So we're going to go over here. We're going to say private vector 2. We call it selected, and then we're going to create second selected. I'll explain you why. So you basically know how in the mouse you can click and unclick. So we need two vectors for that. So basically, click when you push your mouse button down. That is when we're going to store the vector selected. And when we pull the mouse button up, that is when we're going to store the second selected. Okay, so basically we're going to go over here. We're going to say if event .current.isMouse. So this is basically going to check if you have clicked the mouse or not. And this is very important to check, because even though you've clicked once, it might go through the script twice. That's really weird. You can check the Unity's manual on why it does so, but this is the way to do it. So you're going to first check if the mouse has done something, and if it has only done something, we're going to say input dot, we're going to see what it has done. So basically the if statement is saying, okay, has the mouse done something? If it has done something, we're going to see what it has done. So we're going to say get mouse button down 0. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say selected is equal to x. You know what? We're going to make this an int selected x private int. Or sorry, never mind. I changed my mind. We're going to say selected.x is equal to x and selected dot y. Now remember, these are vectors. Selected is a 2D vector, but we're not going to treat it as a 2D vector, but we're just going to use it to store the x and y information. This might not make a lot of sense now, but later on it will. So now this is basically saying, okay, if we have clicked the mouse button down, we're going to store the x and y. And then here we're going to say another if statement. Gonna copy paste this, but now the difference is we're gonna say get mouse button up. So it's basically when you pull up, when you get back the mouse button, and basically 0 means left click. You're gonna say second selected dot x is equal to x, second selected dot y is equal to y. So now that we have now this will enable us to drag, because now we know the initial position and the final position. So basically now when I click and I want to drag it somewhere and drop it, I basically know where I first clicked it and where I left the mouse after dragging, if that makes sense. Now just to make sure this thing works, we can do a debug.log. I'm gonna say debug.log selected, and then put in, just to make sure this is working. It's always good to debug the moment you make a functionality. Small change we need to do before checking is actually where we say even.current.isMouse and check if we click down the mouse. Instead of saying get mouse button, we need to say get mouse button down, because that is when it means we have clicked and clicked down. Get mouse button basically means when we're actually already clicked, but we're clicking it and it's like in a dragging motion. That makes sense. So now we're gonna check over here. So here I'm gonna click on 1 and then I'm gonna drag it on to 9-3. So as you can see, it says 1193. So basically it has the initial position and the final position, and from this we can enable the dragging functionality. Okay, so basically before we start the dragging functionality, we need a variable. So this variable we're going to call private item temp. So basically temp is basically when we click on an item, we're going to store it in the temp, and then we're going to remove it from the inventory, and then if it has successfully dragged, we're going to set it to that x and y position. If it has not successfully dragged, we're just going to put it in the same and delete it from temp. If this does not make sense now, it's completely fine. I will code it and it'll all make sense. Okay, so now that when we have clicked over here, we need to store it into temp. So basically, I'm going to go over here. I've clicked on this item, and now we need to store this. We need to store this item in temp. The reason we need to store it in temp is so that we can actually use temp to drag it around. So now we know that x and y, we can go say if slots, let's go over so we're going to say if slot x dot comma y that item is not equal to null. So we're doing some error handling and checking if it is not equal to null. We're going to say temp is equal to slots x comma y. So now we're storing the item that is stored in the x comma y coordinates into temp. So now we have it in temp. And now what we're going to do is over here, we're going to say if the second selected dot x is not equal to selected dot x, and second selected dot y is not equal to second selected dot is not equal to. So basically here what we're doing is when we drag it and drop it, we're checking if you're not dragging it into the same coordinate, because it does not make sense to drag it in the same coordinate. We want to drag it into a completely different coordinate. Okay, we need a small change over here. Instead of an and, we need an or sign. So basically either of these should be true, because what can happen is, oh, whoops, we have an error over here. Sorry, this should be in slot.item. So basically, you're not gonna set the actual slot to the temp, but the item in the slot to the temp. Okay, so basically you can literally have it over and you want to drag it from here to here, and in this case your y coordinate is not changing but your x. So basically, if either of the coordinates change, then you can successfully drag. So now to drag, what we're going to do is we're going to call a new method, say void drag item, and we're going to return a bool. Now the reason we're going to return a bool is if you have successfully dragged the item, it can return a true, and if it has not dragged an item successfully, it can return a false. So you're going to say drag item. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to take the x and y coordinate of the temp and then try to add it to the new x and y coordinate. And by the way, when we set temp equal to this, we're going to say slot x and y item is equal to null. Just for, yeah. And then we're going to say add item. Let me check a small thing. Okay, you're gonna add item. Sorry, we need the x, y, and the item. I'm gonna say second selected.x, because that is our destination. Second selected.y, and then the actual item, which is second selected.x. So this is the we actually want to move the temp. Whoops, my bad. So basically what we're doing is, after we click out, actually I don't really think we need a new method for this. Just makes it too complicated. So basically, if we have moved up the button, we're going to store the thing. We're going to store the destination in second selected, and then we're going to try to add the item to the second selected if it's not the same coordinate. And we have errors, of course. And how do we have errors over there? What? Okay. Has some invalid arguments. We need to convert it to an int, I guess, because when you're taking it as a vector, it returns a float. Yeah. Okay. So now let's hope it drags. And no. I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so basically we will need to do a little bit of changes. So basically, first of all, we're gonna comment out this, and actually we're just gonna leave it like that for now. So basically what we do is we never actually use this item. For example, when we add an item, we don't actually set the item of the slot to anything. but we do add it in our items list. So what we can do is, instead of saying temp is equal to slots xy.item, because this is null over here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna loop through this items list and check if any of those items fall into the x and y coordinates. Now this might not make very much sense now, but it's soon gonna make sense to you. So basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna for loop through all the items. For int index is it called? Items.count, is it? Yeah. And index plus plus. So now we're looping through the items, but now once we loop through the items, we need to check if they fall within this x and y coordinate. So we're gonna have a for loop int x, or we can name it x. Let's name it count x is equal to items dot items, then we're gonna say int x I'll explain this code in just a second. It seems complicated, but it's not that complicated. So basically what we're doing is we're first looping through all the items, and then we're looping through the range at what it covers the slots. So basically, for example, a chest can cover 4 spaces in total, and we need to consider those 4 spaces. So basically that is what we're doing over here. So when we click an item, and we're gonna say over here, and if we're gonna say if count x is equal to x and count y, oops, double and is equal to y. For now we're just gonna debug.log item, say it. Because we're looping through the items list, we're going to say items index. So we're going to get the item, and then we're going to get its name. Or image height. What do we have in the items? We don't have a name. Well, that's weird. Let's just get in the image. We should probably add in the name. So basically we're trying to select the item. Well, apparently it does not select the item. Guys, I'll be back in a second. Okay, so there was a small error over here. Where you have if slot xy item is not equal to null, you have to take that out because it is actually always equal to null. And that is why we're making this big annoying loop method over here. So now what it basically does in short is it basically checks if you have pressed the mouse. It makes the selected x and y equal to the current slot x and y we selected. And it searches through the items list over here and checks if that slot actually contains the items. And if it does contain item, we're going to just debug log for now. I'm going to try it. And as you can see, as I press, it returns chest over here, as you can see. So it works. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say temp is equal to items index. So now we've stored the temp, and now that we have stored the temp, it is going to add the item and it should work. Don't need this. Hopefully it does. I know a possible error that can happen right now. It's going to duplicate the item. Oh, it doesn't. So it does duplicate the item, I guess. Yeah. Because we can't actually put it in. It duplicates the I know what the problem is. Just need to go around solving this. Okay, so basically what the problem was is after we actually set the temp to the selected item and then we add the item, we actually first of all we don't add an item to it. We actually because if you're adding an item, you're making a new item, you're duplicating the item. So that is one thing you're doing wrong. And second, we actually need to set all the occupied to false once you've done that. So first what we're going to do is we're going to remove item. So basically we're going to go over here, we're going to put in remove item. And what we're going to do is we're going to send it an item. So basically we're going to for loop through all the slots that this item is occupying. We're going to say count. We're going to say x is equal some dot x. And then you're going to say x plus plus. So we're using this loop a lot of times where we have to actually loop through all the slots that are occupied by the item. Gonna go to y height. It refuses to give me the height. Did I spell it wrong? No. Okay, what is wrong? Sorry for this. It's annoying. That height. Okay, I'll just go with the manual. I usually don't like to work without it prompting me stuff. Spheres. Because it then gives me errors. And that's why. There should be a semicolon over there. Does it give it to me? Not yet. There we go. So basically we're looping through all the slots, and first what we're going to do is we're going to set the occupied to false. I'm just going to copy paste this over here because it's the same thing. X, Y dot occupied is equal to false. So now that we have set it to false, we need to remove it. I'm going to say, go to the list over here, items dot remove item. So hopefully this works. So after we have added the item, I'm going to say remove item temp. Actually going to remove it before. Now there's a couple of error handlings that we need to do before we actually can remove it. I'll explain in a second. Actually, we're going to remove it over here. You're going to see something really weird happen, but hold on. So if you select this shit, okay, so there were two problems. So basically when we remove item, what we want to do is we want to return and completely break, because once we have removed the item, we're done. And second of all, in our remove item over here, there was an X over here that we need to change to Y. Just gonna take that off. And now we're just gonna try and drag stuff around. For now it's gonna look a little weird because it's gonna disappear. So you're gonna click and you're gonna drag. So now this has a lot of bugs that you cannot see yet. For example, if you drag it out and drag it, see, it does weird stuff. It's really weird. It's weird, but because we need a lot of error handling to be done with this. But the basic functionality works, but we need to just add error handling so it does not do weird stuff. So for now, this is all I'm going to be giving to you guys, a dragging system, basic dragging system with a lot of errors. It takes a lot of while. It's very, yes, I do understand that it was a lot of coding at once, but I'm actually going to give you guys the whole project itself to download, so you guys can look at all of the scripts at once and see how I've scripted the code, because a lot of you guys are complaining about me not giving the actual script, but now I'm gonna give it to you guys. So have fun, guys. Good luck, and if you've liked the video and if you find it helpful, subscribe, like, share. It helps me a lot. And bye bye, guys.